Hi, everybody. This is Todd Creager, and I'm going to be giving you a presentation here, a talk that is titled, How Old Do I Feel? Confessions of a Marriage Therapist Who's Been Married for 41 Years. And yes, that would be me. Every year, around the time of my anniversary, I do a more personal presentation, a personal talk that shares a little bit about me that I've learned through my years as a partner in an intimate relationship. Of course, I try to pick something that I think can be helpful for those that are tuning in and listening and watching what I'm saying. And hopefully that's true today. I think it will be. So, what do I mean by how old do I feel? Confessions of a Marriage Therapist, married 41 years. I will be 41 years on August 12th, 2025. That's a long time to be with one person. And we've had some ups and downs, definitely way more ups than downs. And we've done a lot of learning. But one of the things that I want to call to your attention is something that I've worked on with me, and I've worked on with many of the people that come to me in my private practice. And it all comes under the concept that I've talked about before. That is, I believe, essentially very true. And that is, we're not just one, that we're made up of different parts of us. And these parts, some of them are younger parts of us. And the parts of us that are stored, that are younger, that get triggered by our intimate partners, probably more efficiently than in any other part of our lives, whether it's work or family of origin or whatever. They all can be triggering us in one way or the other, bringing out the best and the worst of us. But really, nothing is like our intimate relationship. And it definitely is a place where many times our younger parts come out. What I mean by how old do I feel? What I've learned is that when there's been problems in the marriage, first of all, I always have something to do with it. My wife also has something to do with it. We all are in these intimate relationships. We're doing a dance together. And it's much easier to see us as a victim and that the other person is doing this to me. But the truth of the matter is that we are co-creating this relationship dance together. And it's really helpful to be reflective, self-reflective, and go, what's going on if there's a problem? And I learned, for example, in my relationship with my wife, that when she would, let's say, be angry at me, my first reaction was getting defensive. And I did that. I was really good at being defensive. I still could be pretty good at it, but I was really good at it earlier. And so, what starts to break that habit? One of the things was to be aware of how old I felt during those moments when I was defensive. Did I feel 35 or 40 or 67, the age I am now? When I'm defensive, no, I usually feel 3 or 4 or 6 or 7, but not 34 or 67 or whatever number I said. You start to, when you start to notice, how old do I feel when I'm defensive? And you don't feel like a mature adult. And that awareness can be a bridge to becoming an adult in those circumstances. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. What are some other times in my life where if I ask myself, how old do I feel? I felt younger. It might have been when I wasn't 100% honest about something because I didn't want my wife to be upset with me. How old did I feel in those moments? If I'm in my mature adult, I am not going around being afraid that that I'm in trouble, that my partner is going to scold me, think less of me. That is coming from a younger place in us. So when I was defensive, when I tried to hide something, when like I remember not that long ago, was pulling out of the garage And we have this lovely car a new car, relatively new. It's now a couple of years old. I still call it new car that I love. And I got too close to the side of the garage and I scratched it. And it sounds loud. You know, when your car gets hit, even when you merely hit a little bit, loud. The first thing I felt was panic because I didn't want my wife to hear it. And of course, I didn't want my wife to know about it. Of course, I told her. As a matter of fact, most of the time she heard it a lot, she would just come out because it happened more than once. Okay. It happened more than once. But a couple of times it did happen. The first feeling is panic. How old did I feel during that time? Did I feel my age? No, absolutely not. Because when I'm in my age that I feel, I can handle whatever she's feeling. I might not like it. I'm not panicking. I'm like, this is what happened. Yeah, I know you're upset. Yeah, I probably have to hire somebody to buff it out or live with it or whatever we decide to do. But I'm surely not panicking when I'm in my mature adult space. But that's not my reflex in these situations. And there's probably not many of yours that are listening. When I have raised my voice and been a little mean, it's also kind of defense. How old did I feel? It's always younger. It's always younger. Always younger. Now, even though I haven't been unfaithful, I've worked a lot with people that are unfaithful. And I could tell you that every time they're harboring a secret, they feel younger. They are trying so hard to hide something, just like a teenager would if they didn't want to be in trouble. So I find that to be a very useful question. And now, what I mean by how old do I feel? I want you to get in touch with your body. What does it feel like to feel young? And then what does it feel like to feel more mature? Story I've told for years. It was actually in the book I wrote back in 2008 called The Long Hot Marriage. It was in that I talked about this when my daughter was my oldest daughter, who was now an only daughter at the time, now not. She has a younger sister, but at the time she was 2. And there was the time when my wife went back to work as a teacher. And I was on Tuesdays, I was home all day with her and I loved it. And I remember we went to a park here close to my house in Huntington Beach, Central Park West. They had ducks and geese, and she was feeding the ducks and the geese, and we were there for hours. And then I thought maybe it's time to go home, but she asked me, Daddy, can we eat at this restaurant? It's called Alice's Breakfast in the Park, which we loved. It's not there anymore, but it was there then. And we got home early afternoon, maybe as late as 1:30, played with her some more, had a great old time. My wife comes home at 3 o'clock. She asked me, did you do whatever? I don't remember the task that I asked you to do. I didn't. How old did I feel in that moment? I said, no, I totally forgot. I was having fun with Ariel and I didn't do it. And she said, when you asked me to do something for you, I come through. And I said to her, hey, how about you go out and come back in the garage and then give me a big hug and a kiss. And then you could, I'm not going to tell you exactly what I said, but it was more like, because it was crude, then you could lay into me. That way, not really cool. And she just rolled her eyes and she went and got the mail and she's looking through the mail and I'm sitting there and I'm asking myself that question, how old do I feel? And I was 37 years old. So I said, I don't feel 37. I feel maybe 3, maybe 7, but not 37. That was a long time ago because that was 30 years ago. Exactly. But it's a story I tell, and I have many others. So anyway, I could feel my younger age. However, see, once I noticed it, now I'm aware. And once I was aware, I had choices I didn't have before. I was aware that I felt 3 or 7 and now 37. And I said, since I'm 37, what might a 37-year-old say? How would a 37-year-old handle this? And I looked at her and I said, I have a confession to make. And that got her attention. She says, what do you mean? I go, when you came in and you told me that, hey, when you asked me to do something, I do it for you. And basically, I didn't come through for you. I felt like a little kid. And I'm not a little kid. And you don't need to be married to a little kid. And I apologize for my defensive and crude reaction. I apologize for not remembering, but I also even more apologize for my defensive and crude reaction. Actually, this is what me as a 37-year-old was able to do because I was in my mature adult and didn't feel threatened or in trouble because I wasn't really. She just wasn't happy. So I was capable of tuning into her. And I said, you have gone back to work, which was hard for you to do because you love being at home as a mom. And you feel a lot going on, a lot of overwhelm. You asked me to do something. I didn't do it. It's the last thing you needed. And I wish I had come through for you. I totally get your disappointment about that and also about how I responded. So I apologize for that. And I will put that pad, I will look at that pad on the refrigerator that has our to-do list, and I'll make sure I write it down. And I will look at it on those days when I'm solo here with Ariel so that I can have fun with her, but I can also come through for you. So I appreciate that. And thank you for being non-defensive and honest and taking responsibility. So, well, no problem. Now I would just put it in my reminders on my iPhone, but back then the magnetic pad on the refrigerator was a good way to come through and be the mature adult that I really was. I really was 37. I wasn't 3 or 7. This is true though for any age. And it's important to know that I'm not saying it's always that simple or that easy to do because these are old habits of ours. Oftentimes, the habits of a younger person, like even when you were a child growing up in your family, don't just go away. I really had to learn that it wasn't my job, for example, to be perfect. That was a script that I learned as a child, and that I'm not perfect. So when you have the role of being something you're not, it can be very stressful. So when I got feedback from my wife, it's still true today. I can still, that perfectionist little voice script can come up. But the good news is that it gets easier to be aware of it, to catch it and go, it's all nonsense. It's not true. I don't need to be perfect to be this wonderful, lovable person. I know I am. Come to realize I can be that lovable person, even when I do silly things, even when I'm immature. Because when I'm immature, I could always become mature and then can repair whatever harm I might have done when I was feeling much younger and acting from that. And it's not necessary to stop feeling young. You just got to be aware that you're feeling young and then not act from that part of you. Because, like I said, once you recognize, wow, I am feeling very young, and that's not truly how old I am. I'm really an adult. I could handle this conflict. I could handle her being frustrated or disappointed with me. I could handle his confrontation of me or whatever the case that you may find yourself in. The adult part of you can handle it, really can. You might need some processing and therapy to get there, but the first step is always to become aware. And from that place, you now have some choices. You now can do what a mature person can do. You can stay present for your partner rather than be defensive. So I have found in my life that asking the question, how old do I feel, either will nip it in the bud and I could act mature from the beginning, or if it's a little too late for that, I've already acted out for my younger part, that at least I can, like I told you in that story when my daughter was 30 years ago, that I could repair and acknowledge her and we could make it right. So I just wanted to share that with you. That's been a big thing in my life and still is. It still is. It's easier for me to be mature. I repair much more quickly than I used to, but I still can act like a little child. I can still feel like a little child. And without awareness, I can act like a little child. With awareness, I can feel it and then act like a mature adult and then ultimately embody and feel what it feels like to be that adult. So hopefully my little talk here with a few stories here could help you. And I appreciate you listening. And I'm about to enter my 42nd year of marriage and looking forward to it. So again, thanks for listening. This is Todd Creager, making the world safe. All love.